love mushrooms. I love them so much that I'm going to make you a mushroom lasagna. So we're going to take out the meat component and replace it with mushrooms. Why? Because they're so meaty. So I've got a variety of mushrooms here. In actual fact, I've got a very special mushroom. This right here is a pine mushroom, and a friend of mine has foraged them. So I'm going to add them to my lasagna, but if you can't find them when they're not in season, by all means, use many different varieties of mushrooms. Of course, we can stick to the classic mushrooms. So we've got field mushrooms and little button mushrooms. These are the same variety, just one has grown much larger. So we need about 800 grams of fresh mushrooms. Before I start to chop these up, we want to get onto the base of this. So a good glug of extra virgin olive oil. And to bulk this sauce out for our lasagna, I'm going to add a variety of vegetables in with some onion. So I've done a lot of prep just to get myself ready to go, and then it's much easier to cook after you've chopped everything up. So onion, along with some zucchini, one large zucchini. I like to grate it because I want everything to sort of break down and really emulate that mint sauce that we all know in a lasagna. Also some carrot, and I've just grated that coarsely. To that, I'll also add a few cloves of garlic that I've chopped. Okay. Now you can see I've got a really large pan for this. You can even do this into a pot because there's going to be a lot of mushrooms going in. I'll also season it with a pinch of salt, and I'll add some herbs. So I've got a bay leaf, and I just love sage and mushrooms. You can change this to thyme. So I'm just going to take the stalks off, and I'm just going to rip them in half and then add them. A nice big handful of that in there. All right, while that's cooking away nicely, let's get onto our mushrooms. Now, you can chop this by hand, or if you want to speed up the whole process, get yourself a food processor, break up the mushrooms, particularly the large ones, with your hands, and I'm going to pulse them until they're finely chopped. You don't want to blend this until it's smooth. We want some texture in it, so we're just chopping this, so that's why I'm going to put it on the pulse function. Okay, our mushrooms have been finely chopped. Look how good they look. And then this is cooked down nicely. See how it's caramelized, but not too dark, and it's softened. This is what we're after. This is the beginning of a really good sauce. So give yourself some time when you're cooking down the veg. In with our beautiful mushrooms. Look at those colours, the colours of autumn. And it's okay if some of them are a little bit chunky because it will break down as it cooks. So we want to coat these mushrooms in our veggies, and again, just get some heat into the mushies. Now, if you thought that was a lot of mushrooms, well, we're not done yet because I've got some more mushrooms. These are porcini mushrooms, and I've just rehydrated them in some warm water. Give them about 5 to 10 minutes to soften. We're going to take them out, give them a really good squeeze, and because they are dried mushrooms, they have a beautiful, intense flavour. I just love them. And you see all this water, we don't throw that out. We're going to use that as a stock for our sauce. So we're just going to roughly chop them with a knife. They can have a little texture to it. So just run your knife through it 3 or 4 times. And that's all you need to taste them in this recipe, no more than that. So pop them in. And we'll just turn the heat up slightly, fold that through, and then in with some wine. So just some classic white wine. We'll bring that up to the boil, and we'll add some of our porcini mushroom stock, about 3/4 of it. You don't want to add the whole lot because down the bottom there's a little bit of sediment, so we don't want any of that to go in. Stir that through. And to finish the sauce, some passata, so just tomato puree. We need about 600 to 700 grams. I like lots of sauce for this because I want this to cook down, reduce, and become thick and rich. Now, I did add a little salt at the beginning, but because there are so many mushrooms in there, mushrooms love their salt, so another pinch of salt. And why not some freshly cracked pepper? Take that out. We can now get onto our bechamel, but for For this to cook nicely, we're going to add a lid. So we'll turn that down and then onto the bechamel. Now, always when you start your bechamel, we need a roux. To make a roux, we need some butter. So I'm going to use 100 grams of butter to 100 grams of flour. Very easy ratios to remember when you're making a bechamel. If you remember 100 grams to 100 grams to a litre of milk, you'll always get the perfect sauce. So just cut that into small little pieces. And I want quite a lot of bechamel for this recipe. I want it to be really creamy and lush and a really important part of this lasagna. So into a small pot, let that melt away. And the flour, we'll just rain that in. And just using a wooden spoon or a spatula, give that a really good stir and cook off that flour. You don't want to add the milk straight away. So you just want to toast that flour. So just get rid of that raw flavour. And it's called a roux because it does come together just like this, very pasty. That's looking good. I can hear that little sizzle, so it's time to add our milk. So 1 litre of milk, and we'll start with a small amount, turn the heat down. We're going to stir that through, and this is where I like to change over to a whisk because we don't want any lumps in our bechamel. So a whisk is going to make life so much easier. Then we can add the remaining milk, bring it to the boil, keep stirring it until it's thickened. This bechamel is thick, glossy and lush, but it has no flavour at the moment. So we need to add some salt, a really good pinch of salt, along with some nutmeg. And then it is a cheese sauce, so we need to add some cheese. I'm going to add just Parmesan cheese, and we will add some mozzarella between the layers too. So a good handful of grated Parmesan cheese, and then we're just going to fold that in and turn the heat off. That is the most decadent sauce. Now back to our beautiful mushroom sauce. It's been bubbling away, it's been reducing, it's cooking. And then when you're ready to make it, well, we can start doing the layering. So into a baking dish, we're gonna start with our sauce. I like to use a ladle, just so we can get a generous amount on the base. So about a ladleful's worth, and spread that out. And if you like, you can fiddle around and take the bay leaves out. I don't mind it being in the dish. Spread that to the ends so it's quite even. Then we'll go in with 2 instant lasagna sheets. I'm using instant because you don't have to par cook it. It just cooks nicely with everything. In with some more of our mushroom ragu and spread that out. And you can see I'm not overdoing it. I'm just adding a thin layer because I want lots of layers in my lasagna. Next for the bechamel. So we'll take the whisk out. It's done its job. We'll bring this over here. Grab a spoon, and then we're going to add our cheesy bechamel over the top. So just spread that one way, and that is not cheesy enough for me. So in with some mozzarella. I've got a ball of mozzarella, and you can grate it, or I'm just going to thinly slice it. Just very thin slices between the layers. I don't want to add too much because I want to use some of this mozzarella for the top too. So we'll just break up some pieces, and we simply continue the process, again starting with our sheets, and then we want to finish off with the bechamel on top. To bake this 180 degrees, I'm going to cover it very loosely with some foil, 40 minutes. Take the foil off and give it a further 20 minutes until it's golden and bubbling. Well, isn't lasagna a thing of beauty? I love when it's bubbly, it's overflowed slightly, it's just right, and the house smells so good. But you do need to let it rest. It's piping hot in that oven, so once it just settles, it's much easier to cut the slices. So leave it for about 20 minutes. I'm gonna cut a little wedge. And lasagna, I mean, it's definitely not a pretty thing, but boy, it's delicious. We're going to grab a plate. I'm going to scoop that out and just have a look at that. Perfect lasagna, gooey, still piping hot. And it is a rich lasagna, so I like to serve these just with some simple lettuce leaves. I've dressed it with some lemon juice, extra virgin olive oil, and some salt, and that's all you need. I love lasagna purely because you make a big batch like this, you have your portion one night or two, and then the next day, there's always leftovers. I always feel lasagna tastes better the next day. If you want a vegetarian option, give this a try, my mushroom lasagna.